Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Trustcast Show. And we have Niklas Pieper with us today. And he is he spent over 2 decades as in-house counsel navigating chemical regulations, crop protection law, and public affairs for some of Europe's most heavily regulated industries. Now he's a partner at one of Germany's top-ranked environmental law firms and co-founder of Scalentis Consulting, helping companies turn ESG, sustainability, and regulatory complexity into a competitive edge. That's a mouthful. Okay, so you spent so we're getting some background there in your. Oh, is this my echo here?
I don't hear anything.
Oh, you don't hear anything. Okay, then it's just me. So I'll just deal with it. So it's in my own headphone for whatever reason. Okay, so you spent 2 decades as in-house counsel in the chemical and agricultural industries. Then you left to co-found a consulting firm and join one of Germany's top environmental law firms. What made you decide to cross over from inside the corporate machine to the outside?
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me. It's really nice to be on your channel, Zane, and meeting you here and having this conversation today. So it's a great pleasure. So back to your question. So what makes me turn from industry to private practice? There are many motivations. So after 20 years, I thought, well, you need to decide, do you want to stay until you retire in the very same setup, or do you want to do something new, something in addition? And I felt it's time to do something new and to share what I learned in 20 years, also to the benefit of many other companies and clients. And that was the reason what motivated me. Um, you know, I always love the big picture. I'm curious. Yeah, that's always inspired me. Yeah, and now it's time to be curious to learn other client stories, not only the one company I'm working with.
So are you doing much the same things? Well, obviously it's for different companies, but Scalentis Consulting, what is your main focus? Can you kind of describe it?
Yeah,
Exactly what you do?
yeah, I can. So look, I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer spending 20 years in-house. And when you work in-house, it's so different compared to private practice, working in a law firm. What you learn is being part of the big team, yeah, being part of the cross-functional team, dealing with a ton of different problems, issues, crises, you name it. And that's actually what I want to continue in this new setup. I'm I'm a partner in a law firm. There, I provide legal services. I provide legal advice. But what I learned in-house is more than providing legal advice. It's strategic advice. It's helping the functions to come over issues and find the right way. And that is what Scolentis is doing. Scolentis is not a law firm. Scolentis is a consulting firm. And what we do is we help our clients in a, I find, uncompetitive setup to navigate regulatory topics or other topics which threaten their license to operate. So what is this setup? This setup is, you can describe it with three attributes. A, we only work together with experienced, senior, seasoned consultants. So no rookies, no one coming from university, no one who provides you the academically perfect memo on something. We want to provide pragmatic solutions which fly in practice. That's one. Second, we focus on people having in-house experience. So in-house experience helps you to focus on the right thing. Yeah, it helps you to understand the big picture. It helps you to understand the um, the area of practice the company is working on, the business area, and that's the third aspect. And this is for me actually the most important one. And that's what I learned in 20 years in-house experience. You never get to the right solution if you ask one person, if you ask one function in the company. It's all cross-functional meanwhile. Yeah, so you need to have a cross-functional team to work on your issues. And that's what we provide. Public affairs agencies, they have public affairs experts. Law firms have lawyers. Commercial strategy consultancies, they have super experienced people working on commercial aspects. We have it all. Yeah. So we have the right people to add to your team, tailor to the solution to your problem you need. So I'm a lawyer. My co-founder is not a lawyer. Yeah, he is a business guy. Yeah, so he worked in public affairs and in business strategy, and he managed business in Asia. Yeah, so he has a fully different background. There's overlap in our competencies, but there's also a ton of aspects where he is better than I, and vice versa. Yeah, and that's how you create the perfect team. Yeah, you need to understand what do you need, what expertise do you need, and you attach it to your team. And it's not only the two of us; it's a network of experts, yeah, who work for us as freelancers, and we can just patch into the project team on a need-to-have basis, and that's really great.
So let me ask some real specific questions because I think it gets more interesting it always gets more interesting when I dig for the facts and just the details. So you guys do, pardon me. Ah, wow. This you do consulting, but can you give me an example of a situation where you were able to work with a company and end up with a result? What was their problem going in, and
Mhm.
how did you resolve that?
Yeah. Well, it's a bit difficult to name concrete examples because it's all confidential there, and the clients do not want that we talk about it very loudly what we are doing. But I can describe it in a more abstract manner. Yeah, what sort of projects we are working on where we add value for our clients. To give you one example. Product defense. It's a big topic, not only in the US but also in Europe. There's
Product
a lot of
defense.
product defense. So it's a lot of regulatory scrutiny out there, in particular when it comes to the chemical industries, when it comes to pesticides, to the agricultural industry. There's a lot of public affairs pressure from a public debate, from NGOs. And so companies often struggle with this. There's new regulation, or they have a new product, or they have certain parts of the product which require a certain license, or where the license is questioned by the regulator, and NGOs creating pressure. Yeah. So you already see there are at least two components. There's a public affairs component. There's a component about understanding the regulatory framework and finding the right strategy to get the license of operate for this company being maintained while having NGO pressure. Yeah? At the same time, you might have a business strategy which relates to it. Yeah, so you have a third component. Yeah, so your product is questioned. Yeah, you need to think through. So what if the regulator says no? we cannot renew the approval for this product. You need to have a backup plan, a business strategy um, to mitigate the threat. So, and these are the situations, or to give you one example for situations where we help our clients to work on this. Other examples are, let's say, you want to spin off a part of your company, yeah, and you want to think through what does it mean for the company from a reputational perspective,
Mhm.
yeah, and so how does the business strategy, which you then change, impact your reputation? It's also something we work on. We help also with due
So,
diligence, yeah.
so let me just, I'll dive in a little bit more about the reputational part of things. And
Sure.
when you look at the reputation, what goes into that kind of a thought process where you're trying to, okay, we have this product, we're thinking we're going to spin it off, but it's a major part of our business. It may be not the major part, but it's a major part. And what's going to happen with our relationships with our customers? What are the things that go through that process where you're trying to examine, what's happening?
Yeah. So we are working on a highly regulated industries. Yeah. So chemical industries, life science industry, agricultural chemical inputs. It's super regulated. Whenever there are changes, there's a public debate on things. Yeah. So people question what certain companies do or not do, and there's a debate on it. And so we help our clients to navigate this and to align here their strategy with the reputational strategy and the business strategy, and to factor this all in. There are also a lot of regulator decisions which factor in and which are sometimes driven by public debates. Um,
Do you do
and
like focus groups to figure out what the debate might be before you're actually getting involved in it, or how do you research that kind of a topic?
Focus group is one tool you can use. It's if you really want to understand how things resonate with certain groups, that's the appropriate tool. Often you don't. Well, there are cases you need them. There are other cases you don't need to spend this. So if you want to really understand, if you want to focus on consumers, for instance, this is a great tool you can use. If you want to think through your strategy and look at other audiences, let's say the public debate, which is driven by NGOs, by media, it's more helping the client to have a very precise narrative explaining what is he doing and why is he doing something. Yeah. So you can work with focus groups, but it's costly and it's time consuming. Yeah. And but in most of the cases we are working on, you don't need that.
So you're finding insight from the existing marketplace and the feedback that you're getting enough so that you don't need to invest in focus groups, or do you get feedback from the regulators along with? So because there's two things there you're talking about. Well, there's three things. You have the NGOs and there's probably a bunch of different NGOs depending on whatever company that you're talking about. There are different ones for each company. Am I right there?
There are, well, so many NGOs out there. Yeah. But the topic is sometimes it's much easier, yeah, for companies. Sometimes they only need someone putting things together in the right way, in the right structured way. Yeah, so thinking through the narratives, the reasoning, why things are, how things be, what are the reasons why certain things are done, and putting it together in the right structure in the logical structure with the right narrative, and working with communication experts to get it on the street. This is sometimes you would think companies are able to do it in-house, but sometimes they need someone connecting the dots from outside, yeah, and creating this broader picture narrative.
Yeah, I think of when I think of the broader picture narrative and someone who's in the in-house, and I think of two things that came up in the last couple of years. One was the Jaguar advertising campaign, and they had kept that all in-house. You know, where they did with the um, trans activists in their advertisements, and their sales dropped by like 80%. They didn't really think through the entirety of what they were doing because they were all in their own little box. They think, okay, well, we want to take this particular approach to the situation. Now I know you're working in chemicals, which is completely different, but I'm just kind of validating the thought process that sometimes you get in your own box, and it's really hard to see the forest through the trees because
Yeah.
you don't have an outside. So is that kind of what you are helping to assist with?
The outside-in view is something we love to add. Yeah, that's super important. Yeah, and it helps many companies to understand better how they are viewed from the outside.
What do you say is the biggest mistake that companies in your vertical tend to make?
Staying too much inside. Yeah, thinking about only watching. Yeah, not really understanding the outside world. Yeah, and how it resonates, and not having the broad picture. Yeah, so that's. Yeah, there's so much pressure in companies, yes, to get the figures right, for instance, yeah, and to act quickly, yeah, and often resources are not available
Are
to do the
these
right
mostly
thing,
are these mostly
and
public companies or a mixture?
well, a mixture, yeah. So profitability often comes with a lack of resources. Yeah, and you want to reach profitability, you want to increase your margin, so you have enough resources to run your business. But in the moment when something comes on top, yeah, you did not expect, and crisis and wishes and expectations from regulators or the public, you do not often expect. Yeah, they just are there. Yeah, they out of the sudden, and that's a situation where Scalentis helps. Yeah, because we have the resources. Yeah, so we have our network of experts, and the mistake by companies is to not realize the moment when externalizing certain aspects is warranted. Yeah, and it's a mistake you often come across.
Do you get called in frequently when the mistake is already made and you're trying to recover from that, or do companies I would tend to think companies are less proactive than reactive? Is that accurate?
Yeah, companies are often bad in anticipating things. Yeah, so they need the things, crises and bad situations need to be at least at the horizon. Yeah, and so that you need to realize it. A good company does horizon scans. Yeah, and think through. So what could happen? What if? Yeah, and works in scenarios and is watching what other companies doing, is watching what stakeholders do or not do, and what the focus areas are, and they think through. So what could it mean to us? So what could happen? So that's it. I think that's the ideal world for how companies could act. But then you're back to the questions of resources. Yeah, do you have the resources to this? Because this does not obviously always add value. Yeah, so it's always questioned whether these resources are spent wisely.
I guess it's really a matter of. It sounds like your consulting is when there's some sort of a crisis, and then these companies are trying to make a profit, or they're under pressure from their shareholders and so forth to make a profit, and so sometimes doing, I wouldn't say the right thing, but doing things that may affect their bottom line in a negative way that don't have an accredited value to their sales or increase in sales. They only have a negative financial value. Sometimes it's difficult to navigate that.
Yeah, crises never, or there are only a few crises which you can turn into profits. Yeah, usually they affect your profit. Yeah, because otherwise it wouldn't be a crisis. Yeah, so
how do you build an advocacy strategy that holds up when the public narrative is chemicals are bad?
well, it's a very difficult question to answer in this general manner, because it always depends on the concrete matter, and it's and public affairs work is done also. Yeah, you don't talk much about it. Let's frame it that way.
So you work across Brussels, Berlin, and presumably national agency. How different is it lobbying in the EU versus to the US?
Well, I talked a lot to public affairs folks working in DC, but I have not that experience that I can answer your question. Yeah, so I know many people working on the Hill in DC, but the system might be different. Yeah,
Okay.
it's difficult for me to really to compare. Yeah,
So your focus is really is in the EU. You don't really,
exactly.
and it would
It's
be
in the
difficult to
EU.
translate that.
Yeah, exactly. The focus is in the EU, which also means that we help, for instance, US-based companies, yeah, to navigate in the EU.
Hmm.
And there are a lot of US-based companies having business here in Europe, and Europe is different. I cannot always tell you the concrete differences, but it's definitely different than the US. Yeah,
Yeah.
and if you don't have the experience and you just have a few people here in Europe, and it's difficult to understand for people in a US headquarters, so how to navigate.
So I did a little bit of research. The EU just rewrote the rules on ESG. An omnibus
Yeah.
package scaled back the CSRD to companies with 1,000 plus employees and pushed CSDD thresholds to 5,000 employees and 1.5 billion euros. Is the EU backing away from sustainability or getting smarter about it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So what we have seen before is a strong tendency to impose a lot of burden on companies. Reporting burdens and obligations on the supply chain, upstream as well as downstream, and that provided a lot of pushback. And with the new EU Commission, but also with some new governments in member states of the EU, like in Germany, there's a shift the idea is to simplify things, to factor in more what does it mean for companies, because as more burden you have, as more costs you have to spend on these aspects. And the question is always, what benefit does it add? And the new EU Commission decided, well, let's try to balance this better. Some people say it's still not balanced. Yeah, if you ask NGOs, they say, well, it's a nightmare that you get rid of these burdens. Now the companies can do whatever they want to do. If you ask industry, they would say, well, that's a good start, but let's continue to simplify. Yeah, there's a need for more. It's still an incredible burden. Yeah, and if you look at the ESG departments in some companies, yeah, so how many people are only working on managing reporting obligations? So, and so back to your question, yeah, there is a shift currently, and I think it's very positive, yeah, for the industry, and a lot of things, in my view, were overdone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also this burden is also imposed on companies based outside of the of the EU, but having business in Europe. Yeah, that's something that's a big issue for certain companies. Yeah,
Yes.
in the world. Yeah, and but that's a political decision also, which has been made in Brussels. Yeah, so
And you can't you just have to deal with political decisions as they come, don't you?
yeah, exactly. You cannot change it.
So you advise on ESG reporting, due diligence, human rights, and sustainability governance. When a new client walks in, where do most companies have the biggest blind spot?
Well, that's a good question. So the two big topics are reporting and supply chain due diligence. So these are the big topics, at least for companies which are covered by the scope of these regulations. And I think the magic is to have an ESG organization which meets all the regulatory requirements you have to meet, but at the same time is as lean as possible and does not disrupt the business more than necessary. Yeah, and finding this magic balance is for many companies difficult, because some think, well, we need to spend a lot of time on it because it's under public scrutiny, and there are others who do not spend enough resources, and then they are hidden by the scrutiny out there. Yeah, so, and this balance, that's finding this balance, that's a key aspect
So
when
what
it
sort of
comes to reporting.
expertise does your company bring to bear in those kinds of situations to help companies navigate that?
Well, the big value we can add is that we worked in-house and that we understand how these processes work in-house. Yeah, and we understand the requirements, but we also understand how processes in-house work, how you need to interpret certain requirements, but you also need to do your reporting in a way which mitigates all risks which come with it, but at the same time is also pragmatic. Yeah, and that's where we add value. It's more than legal, yeah, which Scalentis does not provide legal advice. It's then I put on my hat as partner in the law firm in that moment. It's a lot of legal work, it's communication work, and it's a lot of asking the right questions, yeah, putting together the right wording for your reporting.
Okay, so it's a combination of both the legal side of it and the communication side of it, and that's why you're talking about PR versus, having a single focus versus you have more of a wider focus.
Exactly. I love always the big picture. That's so important.
So the EU removed mandatory climate transition plan from the CSDD. Does that matter in practice, or were companies going to do it anyway?
They need to do it anyway, if I recall correctly. I would need to dig into the details. I would have done that if I anticipated the question, but it's there are still requirements for them, and stakeholders expect that you have a transition plan, yeah, so that you explain how you reach the respective goals. That's still a big topic for companies, yeah, to show how they meet the legal requirements on climate reduction. Sorry, not climate reduction, carbon reduction.
So REACH has been governing chemical safety in Europe for almost 20 years. Is it still fit for purpose, or does it need a major overhaul?
Well, there's also an omnibus, which is worked on for REACH. It's a lot of regulations there. Some people say it needs to be stricter. The topic of PFAS is, as in the US, a big topic, and people want to factor this into REACH. There's new hazard classes here, which were recently developed and factored into REACH and CLP. So industry would always say it needs to be easier to navigate, yeah, and simplified, but the simplification package is under big public debate. Yeah, so it's let's say it's good that it is on the radar screen for changes. Yeah, let's wait and see.
So you also cover healthcare and life sciences, which is actually my background. So how different is the regulatory mindset when you're dealing with a pharmaceutical company versus an agricultural chemical company?
Well, the big difference is that the reputation of healthcare companies is fully different, yeah, because healthcare companies are always understood and perceived as adding something good, yeah. There's here and there some topics like access to medicine in third world countries and these sort of things. And yes, you have also the pharmacovigilance topics where people say you should have acted earlier or so. But generally, it's perceived as something adding value, prolonging or advancing people's life. That's something where people think this adds value to society. When you compare it to, let's say, the agri-business or the agri-chemical business here, where many people do not understand why pesticides are used, then people have a fully different pictures. Yeah, people don't like chemicals. Yeah, not understanding that you are made out of chemicals. I am made out of chemicals. Yeah, medicals are made out of chemicals. Yeah, as are plants and pesticides you use on them. So that's why these business areas are, when it comes to reputation, are fully different.
So it sounds like you have to be an exceptional storyteller in many ways when you're dealing in the chemical business. To tell the story of why. Is that not accurate, or is that
I would I would love that people hear more stories about why chemicals not automatically harm you only because it's a chemical. Yeah. And that's people think chemicals, or many people think chemicals are automatically something bad. It's not true. Yeah? Again, everything is chemical. Yeah. And because everything is made out of atoms, and it's more the, let's say, toxicological assessment, yeah, which is required to understand whether or not a chemical could potentially harm in a certain way, or it is used in a certain application rate, yeah, and dosage. And so I would love that people hear more stories about chemicals to understand better that chemicals are not automatically harmful, but also understand what are the aspects, how you assess whether something could be harmful or not.
okay? So here I got rapid fire questions. This is more like fun. So
Okay.
Cologne or Berlin? Berlin. Which office do you prefer? Or which area do you prefer?
Definitely Cologne. So we will have Carnival this week, which is at least one reason why you need to stay in Cologne. So you Americans would call it Mardi Gras. That's it.
Uh-huh. Oh
Does
yeah.
it right? Yeah. So that's the big party here in Cologne. So you don't have it in Berlin. Yeah.
Most misunderstood chemical.
Most misunderstood chemical. Oh wow. I have no idea. The term
Okay.
chemicals is misunderstood already.
Okay, that's a good answer. Best meal you've had during a business trip.
The best meal. Oh, I can tell you, I was in India and I ordered how you call it, cauliflower,
Uh-huh.
the white,
Yeah.
garbage in India, and I like cauliflower, but it's not my most favorite. I just ordered it, and it came in 3 different varieties, and it was so tasty. Yeah, didn't expect that. So if you're in India, ask for cauliflower in 3 different varieties.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Well, lately both. One coffee in the morning, then tea.
So, one word to describe EU regulation. That's loaded.
Burdensome.
The last book you read that changed how you think.
Oh, I don't know. I can't tell
Okay,
you.
all right.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'm asking, these are just quick questions. So, if you could fix one thing about ESG reporting overnight, what would that be?
One thing to balance burden and effectiveness better. But
So,
cannot name it. It's too much.
here, this is a good one. Favorite thing about Germany that Americans don't know?
Favorite thing that's a good one. Well, Americans know a lot about Germany. That's at least my experience. We not only drink beer, I can tell you. We also love wine and non-alcoholics. And I don't have a leather trouser in my drawer, so I don't wear any leather trouser.
Okay, well, it was a pleasure having you on, Niklas. And hang on with me for just a second. I'm going to push the button. Thanks for coming on to the Trustcast Show, and it's going to